Welcome everybody from the ETRC Forum 2021. Welcome, and my name is Jennifer from the ETRC board, but also from Gebrüder Heinemann. I welcome you today in this iconic Hotel Atlantic in Hamburg. So we are here today in January 2021, fully compliant with national measures against COVID. So that's why I'm wearing my Gebrüder Heinemann mask. But to show you what a big surprise that this hotel is empty. So why empty? Normally in the Atlantic Hotel we have roughly 180,000 guests per year. So this area of the reception is normally a busy bee state, a bee colony where you have people going to the restaurants, having business meetings, but also staying for touristic reasons. So why am I telling you that, and why did we choose this hotel? So the reason is that we as travel retail are part of the travel ecosystem. We're not only retailers, we are travel retailers. So this means we are part of tourism and of a greater environment. So take a walk with me to the interview with Kurt Schellenberg. Thank you. So the title of our today's presentation, in a very different format for the ETRC Forum, is Time Machine. And Time Machine not only to put us back into the very recent 2020, but also bringing us back to the 90s. And I have an expert with me here who was in charge in Germany of the 90s campaign. So what does that mean? We have people today in the forum, Frank O'Connell, Sarah Branchino, and many others, who know exactly what is meant by the 90s campaign. But I, in person, haven't been there during that time. I only work in duty-free travel retail since roughly 10 years. So we thought it's very good to take a look at recent past, to understand our present, and to put 2020 learnings into a bigger perspective.
Please, come to the fireplace.
Yeah, so now that we sit, we are allowed to take off our masks?
Yes, of course. And in Germany, still business meetings are possible, as we see today.
Yes, exactly. So business is the exemption and the COVID measures to still enable the economy to work. Yeah. Yeah, so Kurt, please introduce yourselves to the ETRC Forum. It's your first time at the ETRC Forum, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and it's great to be with the ETRC for the first time, of course. In these digital times, it's fantastic to meet people you haven't met before. I know you, but of course I don't know the members of the ETRC, and I'm very happy to be part of this meeting today. As an aviation expert, you are engaged in all topics of aviation, and that means, of course, airlines, airports, ground services, and very much the travel retail perspective, because that is where the airports, where the airlines can earn money and have earned money, and I'm quite sure they will earn money again.
Thank God. Yeah, so you're quite positive. But let's take a look back. I mean, we called this session the Time Machine, and I asked you to participate because you were behind the scenes, but also in front of the scenes in Germany in the so-called 90s campaign. So what does that mean, the campaign of the 90s?
Yeah, that was fantastic time because I met Gunnar Heinemann for the first time, and he said, well, you're not only expert in aviation, you're also expert in communications. And we want to do a campaign in Germany because all the member states of the ETRC, the participants in this way to fight against the European Commission, they said we need national campaigns as much as we need a strong lobbying in Brussels. And so Gunnar Heinemann and Christian Breitzke in Germany started to think about something people as passengers, as customers can feel that it will be stolen. That was the idea. Duty-free has to continue, and on the other side telling people duty-free might not be there, might be abolished by the European Commission. It might not be possible anymore to have a good, cheap international product buy for a reasonable price.
Did you have the feeling of that this was crisis and a crisis communication that was necessary? Or how did you consult the travel retailer Gebrüder Heinemann, and how should they act?
Yes, of course. To the community of travel retail, it was a crisis. It was a strong crisis because there had been a prolongation from 92 to 95 already, 3 years.
So like a grace period.
Yes, of course. And then from 95, there was a new date. It was 30th of June 99. And the idea was to continue again with the grace period, or even to fight for keeping duty-free for inter-European journeys forever. It was the European Commission being strongly against it. And in the end, after these 2 prolongation phases, it was not possible to continue again because Denmark was voting against duty-free. It was the coalition partner in Copenhagen who said, no, 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 we want this single market, so we don't want duty-free anymore. Funny, because Denmark was a strong pro-duty-free country.
So dear ETRC forum participants, I saw a very big paper folder on all these proof and snippets of the media, of the German media and so on. So I went through this black and white copies a lot, and I saw some very interesting pictures and some very interesting communication. So what was the selling story of travel retail duty-free in the 90s? And I want to mention here the Zamba Girls.
I was quite
sure. Tell me, Kurt, about the Zamba Girls.
Well, I think for a man it's quite difficult to tell you about the Zamba Girls, but I must say they were fantastic performers. Because we wanted, together with Gunnar Heinemann, we wanted to show not only the spirit of duty-free in a shop, we wanted to show the whole atmosphere of an airport or of a cruise boat. And so we had fantastic music, fantastic girls dancing and having the spirit of holiday, and people that were very positive in their talks with the journalists about the duty-free system.
So looking at it from a more recent perspective, do you think that still the shopping environment and the excitement, where the Zamba Girls are of course a symbol of, that this excitement still is a value of travel retail?
Even more than in the 90s, I'm quite sure, because in our lives the international brands are so important. Which fragrance do you use? Which fragrance does someone in the United States use? And you still have the idea of this privilege buying at a special market when you are traveling. And I met some nice ladies at Düsseldorf airport once in the 90s, and they said, just behind the security control, one lady said to the other, and now we do free shopping. And actually, it was not free shopping, I'm quite sure. They wanted to pay, they knew they had to pay. But for them, it was the idea that there's something very special now, and it's their privilege to go into these shops after the security control and to enjoy special market, actually brands, and I'm quite sure these good pricing.
So what I also saw in this big folder is argumentation that travel retail is relevant for the airports, but as well as travel retail contributes to employment and is a job engine. So what do you think? Was this a strong argument in the 90s? Did this work as an argument?
Yes, of course. The argument of 10,000 jobs who would be gone by abolishing duty-free for inter-European journeys was very strong. Some 22 years later, we must say it didn't happen. The jobs are still there in the travel retail industry, but I'm very sure it's still a strong argument in these COVID-19 times, because in this area it's not only travel retail that talks about future and the future of jobs, of employment. It's the airports, it's the airlines, it's the cruise and ferry industry. So this is still a very strong argument, even after having seen that the duty-free and travel value sales are still strong in the time till 2019, and the 10,000 jobs we have been talking about, they are still there, but I'm sure for the future it will be difficult to keep them all, and it must be our strong engagement.
What we experienced as Gebrüder Heinemann is the enormous difficulties of explaining the real value of travel retail duty-free. In 2020, we found out that it's difficult in engaging with regulators, engaging with municipalities, with federal states, or on EU level. So this is why it was the time of associations and it was the time of political engagement. But, and that was the difficult but, what was already difficult in the 90s, yes, excitement and yes, B2C engagement, but it seems that there are similarities between the 90s campaign and today's messaging. So what do you think if I say travel retail duty free has an identity crisis, which is not caused by COVID, but worsened by COVID?
We know that this industry is systematically relevant. We know it because we know how airports have to fund their money, have to start operations on a profit basis, and that is only with shops being opened again, with all food and beverage offers, and of course something like meetings and places we don't need at the moment. But I think many people don't know about it, and that is the external crisis. People don't know how important this revenue stream is to the industry, and people still don't know how duty-free works. They don't even know how travel retail works. But for the industry, it's very important that the regulators and the politicians know how important this industry is, and of course there are taxes to be paid, and there are many jobs on a good wage base, I think, and 7 days a week. So this is not known in the public.
And we think that the public then turns into a public opinion, and public opinion makes laws and regulations. So the 2020 big learning also for Gebrüder Heinemann is, and I can talk openly about it today, politics happen local, even more local than we would have ever thought, because Hamburg is a city-state. I would love to say like Singapore in comparison, but that really does not work if we look at the typical Hamburg weather, for example.
And Singapore has a huge harbor, and Hamburg has a great port, I think.
So politics happen local, and we need to tell the travel retail duty-free story locally and make it fit to politicians. So maybe it's less the excitement that we can tell as a defending story, as an explanation story, but maybe we need to talk more money. Could this be a solution, talking about the hard factors, like what is aeronautical revenue, what is non-aeronautical revenue? And now you as a communication expert, and you know I have a communication department as well, it bothers me big time that non-aeronautical or non-aviation is a bucket where travel retail sits. So we are non.
Yeah, that's
we are non.
Not a good idea to be a non in life. I think it's a no-go.
Yeah.
And actually, it's even if you think it's something everybody might understand to be non-aeronautical, nobody in the public will, no politician will, because the story is we are part of aviation. So we can't be non.
But we are not an airline.
We are not an airline, and we are not an airport.
We're not an airport,
right.
yeah.
But still, I think this non-thing is a no-go, and it's very important for the industry to show that this is a revenue stream that really makes things happen, makes things profitable. And so retail, nobody in the public would think retail downtown or on high street is a non-idea. It's something that's very important. It's a must. You have companies paying a lot of money to be on high street and to communicate with the customers. So they would never say, I'm non. And actually from the airport and landlord perspective and from the brand's perspective, this is very important to make money. So it's good to talk about how revenue streams in the future will look like. And I'm very sure it's not the low-cost airlines making things happen at airports. They bring the passengers and they take them home again, but they will not leave much money in the future. They haven't done it before, they won't start now. And the legacy carriers, they will adapt to this kind of bargaining with airports. And they will now say, when we come back, what do we get from you? Because we send in the passengers. It's the story we know from Ryanair, from Wizz Air, from EasyJet. And maybe it's not a wrong story. can be true. They bring the passenger, or they bring them somewhere else. And so it's important that the airports offer this idea to the public. And I read some interesting papers from airports, how they will restart. And the funny thing is, in every paper it says we need passengers and we need more revenue from these passengers, direct revenue. And that is, of course, retail, that is F&B, that is parking, that is meetings.
We need more excitement, we need more Zamba, to a bigger extent maybe. But on the other hand, we need to discuss and talk more about revenue. And I totally agree. I think it's Portugal or Portuguese airports where I once saw on a business card that they didn't call it non-aeronautical, but they called it extra aeronautical. So that at least is a first positive step in showing that there are two different arms and revenue streams for airport, which is aeronautical, landing fees, handling fees and so on, but also the income coming from travel, retail, food and beverage and so on. So I think that this one arm, aeronautical, with all the big carriers, did an excellent job. But for us as the commercial arm of the airport, for non or extra aeronautical, we need to do a better job and we need a better selling story. And that's a big learning for us, because we really saw that when Gebrüder Heinemann ambassadors, like the owners themselves and the German Travel Retail Association and the ETRC, we all had the same challenge. We need a better selling story of who we are. And this is why we are so provocative today and say we have an identity crisis. And that's not only because of 2020. This is something that we spot in the 90s campaign as well.
Yes.
Now, when we are involved now in forums and in brainstormings, we see a lot that people tend, when they think about recovery, new normal, that they tend to say after the crisis or post-crisis. And that's another important learning that we want to share today, because we had this discussion already in Germany at a German press conference where we said, stop doing that. You put your teams, you put the great people working in travel retail in a hibernation, in an artificial hibernation, where people are just a lamer version of themselves. So it's a dangerous trap. So we need to still encourage our teams to do not think post-crisis, not after crisis, but think now. And that's something very important, that with small communication, you can change mindset and encourage people to still believe in traveling.
For the mindset of 2021, it's important to understand that people don't want a new normal, because this new thing is no normal, and it shouldn't be, to me. And the second aspect is that we don't go back to 2019. We are now in 2021. So 2020 is not banished. And everybody still is dealing, especially not planning travel, not planning flights, and not planning summer holiday. That has never happened before. Now we are in January, that people don't talk. What will we do in June, July, August, and where will you be?
Easter
still not happening, actually. Well, happening in churches, of course, but it's not happening in travel and not with people, I'm quite sure. It might be a first restart moment, but it's not the new normal, and it's not something we want to return to like 2019. And this is important. We have to work now, and we have to encourage people to think of the next weeks and months.
But it seems, of course, if we're now in January, it seems very inappropriate discussing travel. But we decided doing this openly because it is the ETRC forum. We are with family and friends together, and this is our business forum discussing our business. But we also think that it's very, very important that the people in this forum and the people in the travel retail industry, that we role model traveling. So what you are saying is that in 2019, traveling was mainstream. Everybody had access to traveling, everything was possible. You had 5-star hotels, you had backpackers, Airbnb. So this is now the major shift. So our message today here for the ETRC forum is that we need to role model traveling. And all the people joining today have access to budgets and travel budgets and so on. So we think it's totally wrong if big companies stripe out in their budgets, in their planning, travel budgets. That's like shoveling your own grave. The travel is the imperative in the retail that we are doing, in the retail where we sell the products of the industry. Yeah, so our point today, dear ETRC forum participants, is that we believe in traveling and we believe in travel retail. And travel retail matters, not only revenue stream, not only airports, but it has some challenges with explaining ourselves in this ecosystem. And we need to understand that from mainstream to niche to adventurous traveling, there are opportunities that we can embrace together. And this is our point here today, that we already faced some challenges in the past when we look at the 90s and when we look at 2020. But don't only look at 2020, look ahead. And we all need to role model traveling, and don't cut travel budgets. That's also important for travel retail. I hope we will all meet in person again, and thank you for making this happen today. Maybe you can use the chat forum for ETRC currently and post, for example, the pictures that you dared to travel even in 2020, because I have the feeling in some meetings some of us did travel and they did all the testing and the extra effort to be fully compliant with all these travel restrictions. But if we are not the adventurers, the explorers, where traveling is now extra difficult and also has some health issues involved and takes extra effort, it is possible and it will be easier soon. Maybe not Easter, we hope for Easter, but at least we have a plan and we don't put ourselves into hibernation.
Do you think it's a good idea to show our two private pictures just to share?
Yes, we did travel in 2020 and you were even earlier than myself, but because you did a flight to Berlin, the first ever flight to the new airport in Berlin.
That was great. The inauguration of this airport, we all have been waiting for years. And then it was possible to be on the first aircraft.
A decade almost, yes. Yeah, so we did traveling, but of course...
With your child?
Yes, I did with my little daughter, and we went to Fuerteventura. I had to think because Fuerteventura in German sometimes is future venture, so depending on the pronunciation. But this brings me back to the point. Traveling is now adventurous. It takes extra efforts, extra hurdles and bureaucracy, also in terms of testing and getting the right QR codes, and it takes a lot of effort, and it will in the near future, so it will stay this way. So if we do not role model traveling, who should be such an explorer or adventurer? It must be the frequent travelers. Everybody should role model travel whenever it's appropriate doing so, and always, of course, compliant with COVID measures. But we need to take that extra effort, and we think it's important to role model traveling.
And it was great fun to me, and I saw from your pictures for you as well. And I'm quite sure this fun, this positive emotion is something we really should start in 2021 even more than we could in 2020.
Yeah, travel retail matters and traveling matters. Thank you very much.